What's up, boys? I got a video here that should be a little shorter. It's kind of a little fun, cutesy little game from a Smith Mora, which is kind of my favorite e4 opening these days. Well, at least against the Sicilian, which just starts with this pawn sacrifice here. There's actually another way to play this right here. Is that the next most common, maybe not the next most common theory move is knight f6, and basically if you take here, I pick up this pawn, and I think it's pretty good, honestly, for black, all things, or for white, all things considered, because I just feel like you get some threats out here, you're going to develop your pieces out faster. That's not even the best move. Engine says black is winning here, but I never mind playing against it. But the correct move you're supposed to play after this, if you play knight f6, actually push, then you move the knight over, then c takes d4, and this is kind of just transposition to a slightly different opening that I like. So anyways, most of the time, though, the player takes on c3. And kind of the whole motif I wrote here is the f7 pawn is kind of the target in the Smith Mora. A lot of crazy attacks, a lot of crazy checkmates involve going after this pawn. And so one of the downsides of the move my opponent played, e5, as opposed to the theory move, e6, is that it just provides one more level of weakness on that f7 pawn, which ended up being a really important part of the game. And part of the problem with the Smith Mora is I've got this pawn in the center, you got this pawn in the center, but my pieces are just flying out faster than yours. So I'm down a pawn, but I'm always going to be perpetually up in my development until a much later point in the game if black holds on. So there's a really fun part of the game where I was looking at, after I castled, I kind of got this idea in my mind of, well, if black takes here, if black takes here, trades, this is what happened in the game. If you finally decide to take on e4, I have this awesome move, queen d5, that threatens the f7 pawn with checkmate and also threatens this knight. And there's no way to defend. If you go here, I take it. If you go here, I take with the bishop. Let me just give a sample of that line. This position, and that's pretty much GG's. It's almost GG's. The only move you're supposed to do here is castle. Otherwise, it's pretty bad. Or just take the bishop with the queen. Because the problem is there's no longer any e7 queen defending this pawn. So it's pretty tough. Engine says plus 20, which is not pretty. But I also missed a super cool move here, which I should have played instead of castling. And if you guys are interested in the puzzle, you should try to find it out. But it's bishop takes f7. Obviously, if you don't take, well, I've just got my pawn back. I'll move my bishop back, easy. But if you do take, I have this awesome move, queen b3 check, and I pick up the bishop. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm not winning. The game's just back to equality, but your king doesn't really belong there. I've still got a couple pieces out. I now have 3 pieces developed. You only have 1, and this bishop is truly terrible. So anyways, that didn't happen. I castled because I wasn't worried about this sequence. I think I showed you guys already because of that whole bishop takes, and I have this awesome queen move. My opponent castled anyway, and then I took on e5. And the idea here basically is it's very hard to stop me from taking on this pawn if I want to. Now, obviously, 2 pieces for a pawn and the rook isn't always the best trade, but I was not worried about this move because if you decide to take, I have that same tactic, queen to d5, picking up the knight. So that doesn't work. You're kind of supposed to do what my opponent did. It wasn't necessarily the best move, but nevertheless, the game goes on, and I retreat my bishop back to b3, and we're getting close to the cool part of the game. So I'm sitting pretty happy right now because I've got, the king doesn't really belong here in this exact position with the queen because this check is really annoying, and obviously, especially with the threat of the discovery on the next move, because let's just say you do nothing. This is a random move, then I can check, and if you move out of the way, obviously that's not going to work, and so you're pretty much forced to lose the exchange, and so I am happy. My pieces are out. This knight feels a little bit unsupported, doesn't have that many great places to go, and my other bishop can get in the game, my rooks can get in the game, so life's pretty happy. Now here, I had gotten back my pawn, so I said, you know what, it's time to gambit another one, so why not let him take and get that piece development? And then here is a really cool part of the game. We're just both staring at each other. We've got my bishop attacking this piece, which will then attack the queen. You've got this bishop attacking my queen, which then attacks this piece. And there's kind of an awesome brawl that happens. It shouldn't have happened because I missed a very obvious move. Queen takes c3. And if you take back, my pieces are defended, but all of a sudden you've got 4 pieces and I got 5. So I just missed a super obvious move, and instead I went with the much more exciting move. Bishop takes c3, which straight up just brings the game back to equality. But it leads to a really awesome sequence where there's a crazy series of captures, and then finally, bishop takes g7, brilliant move, king takes, and then I take the bishop on b3. And this is a Desperado move, basically. It's a sacrifice you throw in. You're already going to lose the bishop, so why not throw it in, get the check, and then take the piece? And let me show you the difference. It's basically, when you get to this position, if I take here, and then I take, so I take on that bishop on b3 first, black can recapture with any of these pieces. But if you count, there's going to be 5 pawns for black, Whereas if you throw in the legendary bishop takes g7, brilliant move, sacrificing the piece. It's not really a sacrifice because you're going to win the bishop on b3. Takes that bishop, or that pawn is still on b3, but all of a sudden, black has 4 pawns instead of 5. And ironically, we're actually still equal material here, which is a little bit insane. That was pretty much the end of the game before things got kind of just fizzled out. I'll kind of work through the moves here. Fun little tactical sacrifice after pushing b6. I have a check on d7. And I pick up the b pawn, which is funny because black immediately wins the pawn back by taking on b3. And then I made a tactical move here, which isn't that interesting, but I'll show you, which is kind of funny. It's actually losing. I just think it's really cool. I decided to take, it's losing, so it's terrible, but I decided to take on c6, because obviously if black takes back, well, I'll just go pick up this pawn. And if black takes the rook on c6, then I have this silly little check, which is actually terrible. I mean, it's the best move in the situation, but you should not have gotten yourself into the situation, because the problem is, at the end of the day, these pawns are simply too difficult to stop, and I would have lost the game. But that's why I'm mostly focusing on just showing you guys that brilliant Desperado move, bishop takes g7. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.